The British royal family's history is replete with salacious scandals that have significantly influenced the country's society and culture, with romantic scandals occupying a particularly prominent place. While some of these stories remain partially cloaked in mystery, many have had profound and far-reaching impacts on British society, religion, and cultural norms. The modern royal family continues to captivate the public's imagination, offering a distinct and endless source of fascination. In this context, let's explore defining scandals of love and lust that have shaped royal history, spanning from the reigns of medieval monarchs to contemporary times. Before we start, please support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons. King Edwig's love triangle. Edwig's brief and turbulent reign as King of the English from 955 to 957, and as ruler of Wessex from 957 to 959, can be encapsulated by the term scandalous. Unlike his uncle, King Aethelstan, who is celebrated as one of Britain's most accomplished and powerful monarchs, Edwig is remembered for far less admirable reasons. Rather than focusing on governance and leadership, he engaged in trivial conflicts and indulged his personal desires, particularly his pursuit of women. Edwig ascended to the throne at the tender age of 14, only to die 5 years later. His tenure was marked by controversy, the most notorious incident being his departure for his own coronation to engage in a dalliance with 2 women simultaneously. The specifics of this notorious episode are obscured by conflicting historical accounts, but it is widely believed that the women involved were his future wife, Ælfgifu, who was also a close relative, and her mother, Æthelgifu. King Edward II relationships. In 1308, King Edward II married Isabella of France in an effort to mitigate political tensions with the French. Yet, both his contemporaries and later historians have noted that his affections appeared to be directed towards another member of his court, Piers Gaveston. Gaveston had been Edward's closest confidant and ally since 1300, and possibly much more. Edward II's relationship with Gaveston was of paramount importance to him, often taking precedence over all other matters. In February 1307, Edward I, Edward II's father, attempted to separate them by banishing Gaveston to Europe. However, upon Edward I's death later that year, Edward II ascended the throne and immediately recalled Gaveston, lavishing him with affection and granting him the title of Earl of Cornwall. The intense favouritism Edward II displayed towards Gaveston, and later Hugh Despenser, played a significant role in his eventual deposition and death in 1327. The king's unwavering preference for his favourites incited continuous outrage, ultimately alienating the barons, earls and nobles, and turning them against him. Henry VIII and the death of Anne Boleyn. Following the tumultuous upheaval caused by the establishment of the Church of England, primarily to facilitate his divorce from his first wife, Henry VIII faced another scandal when his second queen, Anne Boleyn, was executed by beheading on May 1536. Boleyn was accused and convicted of committing adultery with multiple men, including her own brother, a charge that led to her execution on grounds of treason. However, contemporary historians widely regard these allegations as baseless, believing they were concocted to oust Boleyn from her influential position within the royal court. There are differing views on who orchestrated this plot. Some suggest it was King Henry VIII himself, eager to discard Anne so he could marry again. Others point to Thomas Cromwell, the king's ambitious advisor, who allegedly saw Boleyn as a hindrance to his political machinations. Wallis Simpson. The British monarchy is deeply intertwined with the Church of England, historically deriving its legitimacy from the belief that the sovereign's right to rule is divinely ordained. This notion implies that succession is not a matter of personal choice, but rather a manifestation of God's will, as interpreted by the Church. In 1936, King Edward VIII challenged these long-standing principles by creating a constitutional crisis through his decision to abdicate the throne in order to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Simpson's status as a twice-divorced woman rendered her unacceptable to the British establishment, including the Church of England, given Edward's role as defender of the faith. Against this backdrop, and amidst concerns about public reaction, Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin presented Edward with an ultimatum. He could either remain king and forgo marrying Simpson, or abdicate and pursue the marriage. Edward VIII chose to abdicate, making his decision public in a BBC radio broadcast on 11 December 1936. His brief reign lasted less than a year, and his abdication led to the ascension of his brother, George VI, the father of Queen Elizabeth II. Princess Margaret. The romantic escapades of the British royal family have often been a source of considerable tension, and few are as poignant as the relationship between Queen Elizabeth II's sister, Princess Margaret, and Peter Townsend, a former equerry to their father, King George VI. Townsend's divorce from his first wife in 1952 marked the beginning of his earnest relationship with Princess Margaret. The bond between them became public knowledge in 1953 when a sharp-eyed journalist observed the princess tenderly removing a piece of lint from Townsend's jacket during the Queen's coronation at Westminster Abbey. Captivated by each other, the couple decided to marry. However, the royal establishment and the British government opposed the marriage due to concerns about its potential impact on societal norms, given Princess Margaret's connection to the Church of England and her sister's prominent role within it. The marriage was deemed unacceptable, reflecting the establishment's apprehension about endorsing such a union. Faced with mounting pressure and the harsh reality of her situation, Princess Margaret issued a rare public statement in 1955. She announced that she had decided to end her relationship with Townsend to prioritise her duty to the Commonwealth. Despite this public declaration, she reportedly remained unable to reconcile with the loss of her forbidden love, marking a tragic chapter in royal history. A horrible year. The year 1992 stands out as one of the most challenging periods of Queen Elizabeth II's reign, putting both the strength of the royal family and her leadership to the test against the backdrop of a rapidly changing Britain. In a speech on 24 November 1992, marking her Ruby Jubilee, she famously referred to it as an annus horribilis, a horrible year.
It's turned out to be an annus horribilis,
highlighting the significant struggles faced by the royal family. These struggles centred primarily on the romantic entanglements and scandals involving the Queen's children. Princess Anne divorced Captain Mark Phillips, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson separated, and the tumultuous relationship between Prince Charles and Diana, Princess of Wales, became increasingly public and fraught with scandal. The twists and turns of these turbulent relationships dominated headlines, much to the Queen's distress, as salacious details of affairs and separations emerged throughout the year. This intense public scrutiny into the private lives of the royals was precisely what Queen Elizabeth II and her advisors had long sought to avoid. The tumultuous year was further marred by a devastating fire at Windsor Castle, one of the Queen's private residences, just 4 days before her sombre and now famous acknowledgement of the year's difficulties. This event seemed to encapsulate the series of misfortunes that had plagued the royal family throughout 1992. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to support my channel by clicking like and subscribe buttons.